show. And we are joined by Chip Towers, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, to talk about the national champion Georgia Bulldogs. And Chip, this offseason has been so full of non-actual football news, all, kind of the business of college football news. So it's nice to start to be able to look ahead. And you almost forget sometimes. We had a national championship last year. Georgia broke through after 40 years to win, and this is a team that lost a lot through the NFL draft and graduation, but still pretty loaded for bear. Is this a team that is built to defend that title?
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to find out, and I think that's why we're all going to show up, for their games and everybody else's. It's it's the annual refrain. But what does make it different is Georgia did finally break through after years and years of, close calls and wondering why and all that kind of stuff. And really, I think they're connected where you were talking about. It is such a transitive time in college football, in college athletics, period. I just came back from a trip out to Oregon, to catch up with Dan Lanning, Georgia's defensive coordinator, is heading the program now. And we were talking about, look at the Pac-12. And two of their primary teams bolting for the Big Ten, NIL, transfer portal, all of that makes Georgia's situation, to me, even more intriguing because, it's not a normal year. There are so many extenuating factors. And what's so interesting, this is the first year since Kirby has been the head coach that they have no transfers. And in comparison, I was at Oregon, they had 19 transfers. So it's just weird, kind of the different places that all these programs are and how everybody is handling things. So, that said, your question, I think Georgia is in position to reload, much in the way that Alabama has. If you look over the last 5 recruiting classes, Georgia's averaged 2.3. The only team in the country higher than them is Alabama in that span, and that's just marginally. Georgia's had 2 number 1 classes. So, it's people talking about they had 15 NFL draft picks and 8 of them off the defense, but that these guys were going to be gone was not a surprise. Every one of those guys, Georgia knew they'd be losing this year. So they were prepared for them to leave, and those guys were members of one of those classes that averaged out at 2.3 over the past few years. Now, they're not going to be able to step up and immediately pick up where the guys that were there before left, but they're going to be they're not going to fall off the face of the earth either. I think Georgia's going to be in the mix and late into the game again.
How different do off seasons feel when you're coming off of one where a national championship was won?
Well, it's definitely different, but not decidedly so. Most of the, most of that, I certainly don't want to sound like a coach here, but it was kind of done with all the parades back in January, and books and things like that you had to deliver really quick. Kirby and I have butted heads a little bit on this. As I refer to them as defending national champions. He's very adamant about we're not defending anything. This is a brand new team, and it is. There's the good thing about it, and I buy his rhetoric that he shared at SEC Media Days was that you worry about complacency coming off a national championship if you got a bunch of guys coming back, but the good news, bad news for Georgia was a lot of those primary players on the national championship run are gone and in the NFL now. So there's some hungry dudes behind them, many of them who have been, impatiently waiting to get on the field. We'll get to see them this year.
How confident are they in Stetson Bennett continuing what he did last year?
Well, very confident. It's great that you asked that because today, and look, we didn't know this was happening. It's a whole other story about kind of how Georgia runs their sports communication operations. But we got to talk to Todd Monken today, the third-year offensive coordinator, as well as Dell McGee, the run game coordinator. And, the national narrative is so interesting on Stetson Bennett, right? basically the narrative is that Georgia won despite having a walk-on at quarterback because of a great defense. And certainly Georgia's great defense had a lot to do with Georgia winning 14 of their 15 games, including the national championship. But Stetson Bennett being the quarterback was a big deal, too. And Todd Monken was talking about that today. J.T. Daniels was the quarterback going into last season. He got hurt in the Clemson game that Georgia barely ekes out 10-7 and then could never get well. So Georgia was kind of forced to let their veteran Stetson Bennett take over. And that just opened a world of possibilities for Todd Monken that he just didn't know were there, especially regarding Bennett's mobility in the RPO game. And so the thing is that, were they explosive enough and all that? I mean, Georgia was one of the most explosive teams in the country. They were fourth in the country in yards per completion. And a lot of that had to do with, how they were able to operate in the RPO game. The guy ends up being MVP of the Orange Bowl, MVP of the national championship game. There's some liabilities that he brings being a 5'11" quarterback, but Bryce Young is a 5'11" quarterback. It's just kind of an old narrative. But Todd Monken talked about. I mean, I think the most important thing with Georgia, they got a lot of guys coming back on offense, including Stetson Bennett, a 6-year senior. But now they've had a whole year to kind of like build on this kind of operation. Okay, this is what Stetson does. We can really utilize the tight ends here. We can take the top off when we need to. We can turn those tight ends into blockers and get some pretty good run game going. I mean, this is a really versatile offense. And, guys, they are loaded on the line, on the offensive line. You lost some guys, but, they got 3 starters coming back and just, 15 different dudes, kind of competing for the other 2 positions and playing time at the other 2 tackles. So I think Georgia's going to be a pretty dynamic offensive team because of Stetson Bennett, not in spite of him.
Chip, I can't remember, and I don't proclaim to have the greatest college football knowledge in the world, but I like to keep track of things. I can't remember the last time a team was so lauded just for their tight end group alone. Do you have a comparison?
I did see. I think it was Penn State sent out a tweet to not too long ago. Some about saying they had the best tight end room in the country, and I was like, you might want to search around a little bit there. This one is incredible and it's versatile. Darnell Washington is 6'7.5", 265 pounds. He can move. His foot's not hurt anymore, by the way. Arik Gilbert, hey, the SEC Freshman of the Year from LSU, he's healthy and working out there. And that's not even talking about Brock Bowers, who scores 14 touchdowns as a true freshman. They signed another 5-star out of Atlanta in Oscar Delp. And they had 2 guys coming back anyway. God bless Brett Seether and Ryland Godey. I mean, nobody even knows them, but they're actually veteran guys who would probably be starting on a lot of different teams. So we asked Monken today if he had any 4 tight end sets. Did he have any? Did he run any 14 personnel? And he laughed about that and said that he'd be lying if he said he hadn't looked at it. But obviously that comes with cost. And Georgia has some pretty good receivers, and they have a transition at running back position, but they're pretty high on Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh, the next in the line of the RBU legacy. So they've got some options over there, and those tight ends are going to be a big part of it for sure.
Chip, you mentioned the offensive line and 15 guys competing for 2 spots. One of those guys, and I've now blanked on the name that I was going to ask you, almost transferred during the offseason.
Yeah, Marius Mims.
Mims almost transferred and came back. I mean, I know a lot of that probably has to do with NIL and the opportunities at Georgia, but given the amount, how is Kirby Smart even keeping people like that away from getting him out of the transfer portal, given that there's no guarantee that he is definitely going to be the starter?
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? And that's what we're looking at. That's what I'm talking about. It's such a transitive time. I mean, the incredible thing about Amarius Mims, who was a 5-star signee, number 1, player in the state of Georgia, number 1, 2, or 3 offensive tackle, depending on which recruiting service you ascribe to, and he wasn't able to break into the lineup, was frustrated about it, and there were pictures all over the place. He enters the portal and pictures all over the place about his visit to Florida State, and everybody, he's going to go to Florida State. Florida State has promised him this, that, and the other thing. Next thing you know, Marius Mims is coming back, and I'm certain that had to come with guarantees. Now he's not going to right now. He's not starting at either of the tackle position, but what Kirby Smart has said that they impressed upon him, having nothing to do with NIL, was like, hey, you got to bide your time here, and that you can go other places and start right away. But if you bide your time here, we can develop you and make you into what you want to be. So right now he's the third tackle. You got left tackle and right tackle, which are Broderick Jones and Warren McClendon, former 5-stars and 4-stars, by the way. And they look really, really good. And but he would be the next guy in. He's worked some at guard, but I think that's part of the thing that kind of ticked him off. He found himself getting reps at guard. Said, "Hey, man, I'm not a guard," and so they'll work him in there as much as they possibly can. And O-line, there is not one offensive lineman in the SEC who completes a season without having to come out, because they're hurt. And I think they were able to prove that kind of statistically to him. But that said, what we don't know, and as a journalist, I have a little bit of a problem with this, is you're looking at free agency in college football. Yep. And you've got an NIL all over the place. You've got these different sites that are saying that Bryce Young's getting $1 million and, Stetson Bennett's making $780,000. But we don't know that for a fact. And I think we should know what's going on behind there. And sooner or later, the NCAA is going to have to make some sense of it, because these collectives were not in the plan when the Supreme Court, approved this stuff. It wasn't supposed to be for alumni bases to gather money to dump into the pockets of guys that signed with their school. That goes against everything it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a guy, you're a good player, so you can go out there and make everything you possibly can off of your name. But it's going to be based on you, not on us. And that's got to change. And I think it will. I don't know how, but somehow it's got to.
Chip, before we let you go, we do have a lot of West Virginia fans that watch. Any thoughts on JT Daniels and his journey with the Mountaineers beginning here pretty soon?
Well, listen, I think any of us who dealt with JT Daniels are rooting for the kid. I mean, he's the quarterback in college now. It's just a head spinning phenomenon. You can only play one. And he's one of those 5-stars, came out, went to USC, started as a freshman. He's really battled injury. He was pretty unlucky at Georgia in that regard. And I think he's a good player. Now, he has to be in an offense that's built for him. He's that West Coast quick game, distribute the ball around in quick pass game and hit them deep every once in a while. He's great at that. But Georgia wasn't particularly explosive on offense until he wasn't part of the offense anymore. So I root for JT Daniels. I think he can do a great job. There's no question he completes 70% of his passes as a starter at Georgia. So, he can distribute the football. He can pass it around. But I think he's only going to thrive in a certain style of offense, and you got to keep the defense off of him because he can get hurt.
Chip, you mentioned earlier that you talked to Dan Lanning. Do you think he's going to hit the ground running pretty well there at Oregon?
I tell you what, I mean, I knew that. Having known Dan Lanning, being here the last 4 years, that's one impressive dude. And to be 36 years old in 11 years, guys, 11 years removed from being a wide receivers coach in high school and in the third grade basketball coach, 11 years removed from that, to get Oregon is the first job, but there's a reason. I mean, he's really organized, really energetic, and I went out there and visited with him, and I don't know if you guys have been out there, but, Oregon is Oregon. It's everything that I heard it was in terms of facilities and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I just think it's a matter I'd be surprised if in the next 4 or 5 years he doesn't have them right back in the playoffs. And it may happen quicker than that, but I just think he has everything at his disposal, not to mention, the template that's been given to him by Kirby and Smart in Georgia and Nick Saban in Alabama before that. I mean, these are the guys that he learned from, and he's taken that template out to a place where they've already been proven they can win big. They have all the money, Phil Knight money to back it with. NIL is going to be a good thing. Who knows what conference they're going to end up in or whether they'll stay in the Pac-12. But Oregon's going to be a major player, and I think Dan Lanning's going to get them to the next level pretty quick.
Chip Towers, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Chip, always love having you on the show. Thanks for hopping on with us today.
Yeah, sorry. So I've been traveling and hitting these camps. It's hard to get hooked up quickly, but I'm always happy to help you guys out, and best of luck going into the season, man.
All right, thanks, Chip. Talk to you soon. That's Chip Towers, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Always great to have him on. That's a Georgia dude right there. I mean, like his voice. I love it when we have somebody on from a region and I wouldn't even have to tell you what he's talking about. If I just said, say your name and the last thing you had for lunch, you'd be like, oh, we was talking about the Georgia Bulldogs. Like, you just know it. I always enjoy that. And Chip does actually absolutely excellent work at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, has for a very, very long time. And